Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Mental Warrior podcast, where it's our goal around here to help you win the war in your mind. Because when you win the war in your mind, you win the battle for your life. And today we have our very first interview on the Mental Warrior podcast. So, for those that don't know, I've had a couple podcasts in the past. A lot of them were interview based, but the Mental Warrior podcast is kind of a mix of interviews and solo stuff. And I have a very interesting guest for our very first time. And I want to welcome Alan Scholnick from Alan Scholnick Coaching to the Mental Warrior podcast. Alan, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. Happy Thursday, Zach.
Yeah, Alan, I really appreciate you coming on. We have some interesting things in common, and you do some interesting things. So I'm excited to have our audience learn a little bit more about you.
hmm Awesome. Thanks. Yeah. So I'm a leadership and executive coach. So what that means is I work with people to help them grow their business through their people. And a lot of it goes back to mindset and why it ties so much into the mental warrior, right? It's all about our mindset, how we show up, and how we impact people. So, leadership coach, I've been doing it on my own for the last 5 years. Prior to that, I spent 30 years with a global furniture retailer, finance and ops, but then got involved in leadership, competence development, leadership, coaching, team dynamics, fell in love with it, and made a career shift. And how that career shift happened, it also ties back to the mental warrior, right? Whenever we talk about comfort zone, is I actually had an internal coach back in 2007 that asked me this question of why you playing it safe. And then when I asked them to elaborate on that, it was like you have this cushy VP of finance role, yet you're really good at bringing people together and functions together that would never work together before. And you're always building teams, working on projects, really great with people, connecting people. You probably have more IKEA connections in your LinkedIn than anyone else, and you sit in finance. So that gave me the bug. I found myself doing two jobs, and then I made the switch. And then in 2019, left that organization and then started my own company January 2020.
It's funny that you needed someone to call you out on your stuff to to get it going, because I feel like a lot of times we know what we should be doing, or we have that feeling, but sometimes you need that outside person to get your butt in gear.
Absolutely. And that's where either coaching or mentoring, they're really great assets that we need to lean into, right? And if you think about it, it's someone on the outside who sees the potential in us when we have that the head trash, the self doubt, all the things that are holding us back. It keeps us in our comfort zone because it's safe. We know it, right? But once we have someone who gives us that little kick, but then also we get that feeling of support, it's a lot easier to move out of your comfort zone
Hmm.
knowing that we can go back in and then move out and go back in, and all of a sudden that comfort zone begins to grow. So, yeah, that's one thing. And for me, the other thing is when I meet with a lot of people and talk to a lot of people, is we're all leaders. Like every one of us, you don't need a title. In a lot of cases, your organization has given you a title. That doesn't mean you're a leader. The people who you manage below you, they decide if you are truly their leader or not. Yes, you're absolutely
Oh, I think you froze there for a second. Yeah, I think you froze for a second. You there?
yeah, I'm here.
Yeah,
Um,
I think like the last like 10 seconds or so, you froze for a little bit.
okay, so let me go back to. I'll just go back to. I'll go back to talking, and I'm going to stop here for 1 second. So one of the things that I tell everyone that I work with, and everyone I just sit down and have a cup of coffee with, is we're all leaders. So there's always someone out there looking at you that trusts you, that's not going to make a decision or have a behavior or an action until they see what you do.
Hmm.
So our either our organizations, our companies, they give us a title that doesn't make us a leader. It makes us a manager. The people below us decide whether or not we are truly their leader or if someone else in their organization that they trust is their leader. So once we understand that there's people watching us who are waiting to see what we do before they act, we need to be really conscious that we're leading by example, regardless of what our title is.
Yeah, you know what's interesting is how I didn't really realize the last few years how much some stuff from today is ingrained in us from back in the even the caveman days and the days of the tribe where there was a leader of the tribe and he led all the men and led all the families, and everything today is like ingrained from that. And to be a great leader, you have to be a great example. And it's just super interesting to me how things have changed, but in the same way they haven't. Like we have leaders and bosses at our jobs today, but it all goes back to, we're at the end of the day, we're all humans. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. We're all human. And that's the thing. Like, we're all human. And too often, as leaders or even ourselves, we get so caught up in process and bottom line or top line or deliverables or goals, we forget about ourselves, lack of self care, right? We don't take care of ourselves. And at the same time, we don't take care of our people because we're so focused on that deliverable, that goal, whatever that is, that process, that we forget about without the people, we can't get there. And it's really taking the time to understand the people around us. What are their drives? What are their motivations? What are their strengths? How do I lean into those? How do I feed those? But also myself. Like, what are my strengths? What are my drives? What are my motivations? And then what are my values? And am I honoring them?
Hmm.
Because all too often, as leaders or business owners, we put self care last. And if we don't take care of ourselves, think about how we show up to take care of everyone else. Everyone around us gets the impact of however we're feeling because we haven't taken care of ourselves.
Yeah, that's such an interesting conundrum because a great leader is someone who takes care of others, puts others first, but you have to take care of yourself and put yourself first at the same time. So you kind of have to find the balance. So that's super interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, think about it as a giant pie, right? There needs to be slices in there, and one of those slices has to be self-care. We have to find ways to recharge and re-energize because again, we're leading people, so they're feeding off of us. So if our energy is low or we're just conveying doom and gloom, and 70% of what we say is nonverbal, think about the impact we're having on the people around us when we're trying to grow and develop the people, our customers, the business, ourselves, and yet we're not even starting off from a mindset point of view in the right frame of mind. And again, it goes back to some of the things that you've talked about earlier, right? How do we deal with self-doubt? How do we set aside times for ourselves? How do we reach out and ask people for help?
I'm curious how you got to this point. Did you always feel like, I guess, the two-part question. One, are leaders born? Are great leaders born? Are they created, or both? And then I'm curious. Well, actually, let's start there. So do you think is it a bit of both? They're born and they're created just from learning?
I think, yes, I think some people are born with that natural instinct to lead. Whether or not they're great leaders, that's a different discussion, right? but they're born to lead. And then there's other people like me. I can tell you 30 years ago, I know I wasn't the best leader I could have been, right? But like anything, we have to get out of our comfort zone. We have to try it. We have to fail. And when I say fail, I mean first attempt in learning, right? We're learning.
Wait. Is that did you just drop an acronym?
I did.
Well, I never heard that before. Can you say that again?
So if I think of the word fail and I look at that from first attempt in learning, right?
Mm,
So I'm learning something because this is something new. I'm trying it out. It's not always going to work. And what really hit me, for me, what really hit me was, and how I really leaned into self care around my own leadership, is one of the professors I had when I was getting my master's in organizational leadership. 75 years old, has written 25 or 30 books on leadership, expert in the field. I got to sit down with him, have a cup of coffee. And what he told me is, I practice my leadership every day. And some days are good and some days aren't good. And I looked at him and said, here I am holding you up as the greatest leader I ever met in my life. And yet it's okay that you say you have bad days. I need self grace and let myself know that I'm going to have bad days leading. But what do I learn from it? What do I bring forward? And even on good days, what do I bring forward? What have I learned? So I incorporate that as I grow and hone my leadership skills. There's no goalpost, there's no finish line. You're always mastering your skill, you're always getting better, but there's no, it's like the horizon, right? You keep going and keep going and keep going and you keep getting better and better and better, but there's no finish line.
yeah, I mean, there's no finish line. There's really no rules. There's no guides. The more I'm learning how life is really like the Wild West, and it's just like you figure it out as you go, right?
You figure it out as you go. There's some great tools out there. But for me, again, you said it earlier, we're all human. Understand your people, understand what their needs are and their drives and their motivations. And all too often, as leaders, we go right to money. It's the first place we go. Yes, that's one of the needs. That's not every need. So, what else do people need, right? Understand what else are their needs, their drives, and start to understand how I can feed them and help them grow and develop. Because, again, as leaders and business owners, we tend to hold things in. It's our comfort zone. Yes, we love helping people. Yes, we love fixing things because I'm busy and they're busy. So I want to get it done. It'll get done right. It'll get done faster. And I don't want to overload them, but then no one grows. You don't grow because you're doing everybody's work and you get frustrated. They don't grow because you don't empower them and delegate. They get frustrated. And sometimes we lose really good people because we haven't developed. So there's a lot of different things as leaders that we need to really think about for ourselves of, how is it that I get to grow and develop, and how, like you said, as a leader, how do I help my team grow and develop as well? It's both for sure.
Yeah, and I think one thing I wanted to touch on too is we talked about this the other day, is how this applies to you personally in your personal life too, because there might be some people listening to this who is a father or a husband, um, whatever it is. They might, maybe not, they're not a leader professionally, but personally they might be. So I love to talk about that a little bit, how you kind of apply these things to your life personally, and how people can apply this to their lives. Maybe if they're not an entrepreneur or business owner.
Yep. And I'm going to go back to that statement, we're all leaders, right? So, and we lead
Yeah.
in every aspect of our life, all of us. Um, and it is these tools. I mean, think about this, and it's so often that I see people have aha moments going, I do this for a living every day. I need to do this at home, or I
Yeah.
need to do this with my social group. Or, why is it that I can sit in a room and listen to people and I go home and I can't listen to my partner? or I don't give my partner the same respect that I give my colleagues.
Yeah.
It's the same tools, right? So it's the same exact thing. How can I use these tools at home socially, right? In different groups that we're in, how can I use those same tools here and vice versa? How can I use this tool that I use at home that works so well because my partner and I communicate so well? How can I bring that into my social group? Or how do I bring that into the workplace? Same tools. We're one person. We're 100% human being, and a lot of times we show up the same way in every aspect of our life. And in other places we don't. So a great question for us to ask ourselves is, what do my people see in this group, whether it's work or home or socially, that I can now bring and let these people see?
Yeah.
Same skills, same exact skills, but we don't connect those dots.
Yeah. I mean, do you think it would be a stretch to say the better the leader, the better person you probably are?
I don't. That's a great question.
I mean, I'm not one to say who's the better person, you know what I mean? But
Yeah,
generally you probably treat people nicer, you're probably more upbeat, positive, you know what I mean?
yeah, and so for me, it's when I think of that, right? When I think about that leader or that person, it's the person people want to be around.
Right, right.
It's the leader that everyone wants to work for. It's the person in the social group that everyone wants to be around, or everyone wants to hear, or everyone wants to talk to, because not only does the person talk, but they listen, and they really listen. And then they ask you these really powerful questions that help you get out of your comfort zone and help you grow.
Yeah, the comfort zone, it's such an interesting topic. We could do a whole show just about that. Um, I guess what are some tips to get yourself out of your comfort zone?
For me, one is understanding, again, having that support system. Who is it that I need? Do I need a coach? Do I need a mentor? Do I need a friend? Um, or do I need like an accountability buddy to help give me feedback on how
Yeah,
I'm doing? Because it's scary. So a lot of times when I'm working with a manager who is going to take a different approach, I'm always like, tell your team, because all of a sudden they're going to show up and go, all right, what's wrong with Bob today? He's acting really weird. He's asking me questions, or he's not telling me the answer, or he's not fixing it. Tell him ahead of time, I'm going to work on this. I'm going to work on whatever X is, and I would love your feedback. Tell me how I'm doing. Because we're going to give ourselves the feedback, oh, this is so hard. It's not working. I can't do this. We're going to hear all those limiting beliefs that keep us safe and comfortable. But yet when we get the feedback from somebody on the outside that says, hey, this is working really well, or this is what I saw, it helps us move out of that comfort zone. Helps us, you know, how am I doing? What's working and what's not? What should I stop, start, continue? It's all those things. It's having that person on the outside who can actually see what you're doing, because we'll tell ourselves, you know, again, going back to what you've been talking about on the Mental Warrior program, we talk head trash, and we create stories that we start to believe when the stories
Mm.
aren't even true.
I've been there before. I know, I know what you mean. Yeah, or one thing will happen and then you attribute it to future events, and I've learned that you can create your own future if you stop believing like the past so much.
Yeah, absolutely, right? And we all do this. Every one of us, right? Every one of us has head trash at one point or another. We have imposter syndrome, and some of the ways, again, we can create that, and then we create this. I would, it is almost this cell of we're stuck in our comfort zone. But yet, when we started to envision what could be and keep reminding ourselves the why behind the why of why am I stepping out of my comfort zone, that vision, the reason why I'm doing this it starts to create a new story.
Hmm.
And one of the things that some people have shared with me that I have read too, which I find really, really interesting, and I tell people when I work with them, our brain's like a detective. So if you tell it a story, it's going to use filters and find all the evidence to support that story. If I tell it a negative story that I can't do this is impossible, I'm not good enough, it's going to put that filter on and find every piece of evidence that supports that story. If I use my mindset and my tools, create a new story, my mind uses a new filter and goes and finds the evidence that supports the new story.
Yeah, it's it's a lot of work to do that too, and it gets exhausting.
It is a lot of work. And that's why having someone, a mentor, a family member, even to sit down, a friend, to sit down and have a conversation with, right? To support you, because it is hard. It takes a lot of effort. You need that feedback loop. You need a cheerleader. Absolutely you do. You need someone who's going to help you grow and develop, right? And it can be any of those things. It can be a friend, a family member, a mentor, a coach, but it's someone there to help you grow and develop. And if you think about, and I don't like to use sports analogies, but in this case I will, right? Every sports person has a multitude of different coaches, a strength coach, a mind coach, a this coach, a that coach. Why? Because they want to get better at what they do. And if we want to get better as people, we need the same thing.
I'm curious how you got to this point because you have a lot of wisdom and knowledge, and I know that comes from failure. It comes from pain. It comes from a lot of work. It comes from making a lot of mistakes, figuring things out. So I'm curious, kind of how you got to this point. Do you read a lot of books? You went through some tough stuff. Like, how did you get to this point?
Yeah. Yeah. So a few things. One, read a lot of books. I'm a certified professional coach. I have my master's in organizational leadership. But like you said, a lot of it was school of hard knocks, right?
Yeah.
I can tell you when I was a leader in my 20s, I don't want to remember how I was a leader in my 20s, right? um, but it is about that, trying things out, failing, reflecting, and then every so often, like we have a we have a giant backpack that we carry around with us, and
Hmm.
every so often we need to stop on our journey and dump it out, pick up all the gems because there's some beautiful things in that backpack. There's some other things that you just need to leave on the side of the road. And there's going to be some other things that are like, I'm not ready for this yet. I'm going to put it back in. But you're making room for more gems.
Man, that analogy just gave me chills because
Yeah.
we all feel like we have a weight on our shoulders, we have a monkey on our back, but I never thought that I have a backpack on my back with all my baggage in it. And
Hmm.
yeah, sometimes you got to drop your baggage.
Yeah.
That's
And
great.
some of those bags are full of cinder blocks.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff that you're carrying around that you don't need to, that you think you might need one day in case of emergencies, but you really don't. You got to dump it, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to dump it or let go of it or say, and the other analogy that I like to use with people is if you think about a book, right? And wherever you are in that book, whatever chapter you're in, and it's your book, the next page is blank. What do you want it to be?
Yeah, and I
It,
mean that next page is like the next, every day, right? Every day is a new page.
every day is a new page. What do you want it to be? And how do you want the story to continue? Again, it's mindset, right? It all goes back to where am I starting from? Where's my vision? Where am I going? Who's my support system? What do I need more of? What do I need less of?
So when you're, if let's say you're trying to write this new story, we're kind of speaking in metaphors and analogies here, but let's say you're trying to write this new story and stick with it instead of reverting back to your old story and your old self. I guess it's easy to get super motivated, be into something for a couple days, and then revert back to old habits. So what are like some tips to, I guess, not drift, stay focused, keep writing the new story rather than going back to their old story?
Yeah. Here's a few. For one, I always tell people, I'm sorry, I'm going to use another analogy again, though.
No, I love them. You're doing great.
But you're standing in front of a mountain, right? And you feel overwhelmed and like, am I ever going to get over this thing? Turn around and look 180 degrees behind you. There's a
Mm.
mountain range behind you that you've traversed already to where you are today. So you've done this before. That's the first thing. The second thing is break it down, chunk it down into little pieces, right? Again, you're going to step out of your comfort zone. How can you do that in little scary ways instead of a really big scary way? And every time you step out and you achieve whatever that little step was, celebrate it.
Mm.
Celebrate the win. That creates momentum. Hey, I did this. And then also throughout that journey, build in some self grace because some days you're not going to do it, right? But don't let that end your journey. It's self grace, it's reflection, it's first attempt in learning. What am I going to bring forward? It's those type of things.
Yeah, we definitely, I know I don't give myself enough credit for sure. I think most people, a certain type of breed of a person who's constantly looking for the next challenge or looking for the next thing, they never stop to take a breath and give themselves enough credit. And I think that can make things worse for yourself if you don't kind of give yourself the credit you deserve. So that's definitely important.
Yeah, it is important, right? It is important to give yourself that credit because you've succeeded in whatever that piece of your long term goal is, right? And it is to celebrate it and reflect upon it. Again, what am I going to take forward? And then, like, kind of like you said, a lot of people are in this loop like, what's next? Okay, I did this. What's next? So you also don't want to get complacent and stay at that one win, right? So we got to challenge ourselves, but we also need to celebrate. We need to balance the two of those things of, how do I continuously grow and develop, but also how do I celebrate my wins? Because they provide energy for us to keep going, that incentive, and build in rewards. Maybe you go out for a nice dinner after whatever it is that, you set out your plan. And at this point, I'm going to go out for a nice dinner. At this point, I'm going to go on vacation. At this point, I'm going to go on a shopping spree. Whatever it is, again, what are your drives, motivations? What are the things, right? And build that into your plan so you reward yourself along the journey. Again, you're creating energy, you're creating satisfaction, you're creating emotions that will help you move forward.
Yeah, that's great stuff. And that ties back into what you were saying earlier about self care and how it's important to take care of yourself. So, congratulating yourself and taking yourself out for steak or whatever, that's part of the self care.
Yeah. And whatever that looks like for someone, right? It is that self-care for ourselves. Like, how do we do that? How do we fit that in? And then, yeah, figuring out how do we tone down a little bit, turn down that dial of what's next to celebrate, and then turn it right back up because here's my next goal. Let's go. Right? Whatever that is. And in whatever cadence that is for you, because knowing that we have a support system, it makes it easy to step outside of our comfort zone. When we're too far out of our comfort zone and we don't have the support, we're in panic mode and we don't learn anything. We're pure fight or flight mode. So we want to make sure that we stay in that growth zone where we feel supported and we can grow, and then we can also step back in, and that comfort zone just that it grows. And then before you know it, that place that used to be in your panic zone is now really close to your comfort zone.
Yeah, that's super interesting stuff. I think people are going to love this interview. And I could talk to you all day about this, but I want to respect your time. So as we kind of get towards the end, um, I wanted to ask, what are, I guess, like 3 tips to becoming a better leader? And this is professionally and personally, but like, what are like 3 tips to help people become a better leader?
Yeah, great question. First one, listen. And when I say listen, I mean don't listen to solve, don't listen to fix, just listen.
Yeah. And listen intently. Yeah.
Listen intently, right? Actively listen. Look at what's being said, tone, body language, what's not being said. That's one. The second one is what I'm doing right now, the pause. The uncomfortable pause. Use it, right? As humans, we want to fill that space. Let it sit there. Let it percolate. It gives you time to process your thoughts. It gives the other person who you're listening to time to process their thoughts or what you've just said as well. So those are two. And the third one is learn about your team, your people, your partners. Learn as much about them. Be curious. Ask a lot of open questions. No judgment, just ask and see what you can learn about each other. See what you learn that you have in common, because you'll be surprised things you'll have in common. And then things that you don't have in common that you want to learn more about. Like, tell me more about that. That sounds interesting. Or I never heard that before. What is that? Take it from a part, from a standpoint of curiosity and learning and growing as we get to know each other better.
Man, this has been a great interview. I've learned a lot. I know a lot of people are going to learn a lot from this. But before we end it, now that everyone's heard how wise you are and all the stuff you talked about, we should talk about what you actually do, because now they've heard your thoughts and what you do and how you think. Maybe they want to hire you or work with you. So it's called Scholnick Coaching. I have a link in the description. You guys want to check it out, skolnickcoaching.com. But why don't you tell me a little bit more about, what you do and on your day to day and how you pay the bills?
Yeah, for sure. And I'm going to say one thing though too. I'm only as wise as the people that I surrounded myself with. So
Yeah.
I've had a lot of great people that I've learned so much from. So they're my village, right? So I've learned a lot from my village for sure. So I work with business owners and leaders just around how do I grow my business or grow my team through my people? How do I get to understand what their drives and motivations and their strengths are? How do I utilize them? For myself, same thing. How do I understand what my drives, my motivations, or strengths are? As a leader, how do I learn to turn them up and turn them down? Because sometimes, if I'm that type A personality, the organization needs that in total chaos. They need someone to come in and tell everyone what to do 100%. When everything's working well, the last thing they need is someone coming in and tell everyone how to do their job. You need to be able to turn that down and lean into a different strength, because right now your org doesn't need that strength or your team doesn't need that strength. So for us, it's learning about ourselves, but then also learning about our teams. And the one of the biggest things for me, these are the topics that I help business owners with. Delegation. How do I let go? How do I build
Mm.
trust? How do I create accountability? And accountability starts with me. How do I understand expectations? We all know that we really tell our people what our expectations are of them. What are their expectations of you? Difficult conversations. How do I take a coaching approach to leadership? How do I kind of build this organization where instead of just telling people what to do, I'm going to kind of ask questions and get them to grow and develop? And how do I, what you were talking about earlier, where everything is top down, how do I flip that upside down and get ideas from the bottom flowing up? Because those people know more than we do, right? We're at 10,000 feet. They know the ins and outs. They know what will work. And how do we include them in our strategic planning, in our goal setting, in our objectives? Because when you put all that stuff together and if your team's included in it, it's theirs. It's not yours anymore. It's not Zach's plan. Zach came up with this great strategic plan, but now it's our plan. We came up with it. We set the goals. We need to deliver it. We need to work together when things aren't going the way that they should. So it's shifting some of these leadership principles, like you said, that have been passed down t- for time after time.
Yeah. So do you work with certain types of businesses or certain types of people?
So I work with small businesses where we might have two or three people, all the way up to national and global companies as well. So work with that different dynamic, and I work with them in different ways because they have different needs. And I've always said there's no one approach to this. So it's really understanding what is my client looking for? What do they want to walk away with? And then how do we develop something that meets that need? It's not a canned, this is the way we work, this is the process. It really is, what are your needs? What are your pain points? What do you want to solve? How do you want to grow? Let's figure out what it is you need or your team needs to get there.
Awesome. Well, Alan, I really appreciate you doing this. So your website is skolnickcoaching.com. I'll have the links are in the description if you're watching on YouTube or listening on audio podcasts. And then you're also on social media, right? You're on Facebook, LinkedIn. How can people get in touch with you?
Yep, I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn as well. And if you just put in my name in both of those and or Alan Scholnick Coaching, you will find those as well. And you'll also find a scheduler there on the web page to sit down and have a cup of coffee or just have a chat. Get to learn more about each other.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the calendar now. Yeah. So yeah, guys, I'll have a link to all of that in there. One other thing too, I just saw your tattoo on your arm, and just remembered we both have the same tattoo, don't we? You both have an anchor tattoo,
Yeah, we both have an anchor tattoo.
and
Exactly
yours
right.
yours is on your forearm too, right?
Yeah, mine's on my forearm
Yeah,
too. Yeah, I have one
yeah,
here. I have one up here.
yeah.
Yep.
I meant to bring that up in the beginning. I
Yeah.
forgot, so I'm glad I
Yep.
brought it up now.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Me
We
too.
could start our own little club, people with anchor tattoos.
Yeah, and it's again coming from a standpoint of curiosity. When you see someone with one, ask them what the story is behind it, because there's always a
Yeah.
story.
Well, now you put me on the spot, and I feel like I have to ask you I feel like I asked you before, but now I'm curious what your story is, if you don't mind sharing it.
Yeah, I don't mind sharing. So on this arm, which because I also have an anchor on this arm as well. But for me, there were certain people in my life that were my anchor, my helm, and my lighthouse, which is what this tattoo is.
Hmm.
So always being that vision, always helping me stay where I wanted to stay, and helping me when things went sideways.
Yeah. I mean, that's similar to me. Why I got the anchor to stay balanced, and I have like I have a competent anchor, so it's like stay balanced, stay the course, stay focused. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah. And we just learned something else because I have a compass on this arm as well. So
Oh wow, that's funny. Yeah, I remember our first time we met. I'm like, wait a minute, we have the same tattoo. Like, what's going on
mhm.
here? This is crazy, and it's like in the same spot.
Yeah, it is cool. Matt, Zach, this has been great. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, Alan, thanks so much, guys. So thanks for watching and listening. Make sure you're subscribed. If you're not subscribed, tell a friend, tell a foe. Thanks for watching, listening, the Mental Warrior Podcast, and we'll be back next week with another episode.
Awesome.